we're looking at finding y-intercepts and zeros of a function from its graph. So it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. What do we mean by y-intercept?
Where it crosses the y-axis.
Does it have to cross? No, it just has to touch. So keep that in mind. So y-intercepts where it touches the y-axis. What is a zero?
Where it touches the origin.
Doesn't have to touch the origin. It's touch the x-axis. So y-intercepts are when my function or my graph touches the y-axis, and zeros are where my function touches the x-axis. So that's what we're looking at today. Okay, if you don't have it out yet, you can have your calculator out in front of you. So here's my first graph. I'm interested in finding y-intercepts and interested in finding the zeros. This is on page 20. I think this is number 17. If you want to follow along in your book. So I'm looking for the y-intercept. So what's my y-intercept on this one? 0. So what I want written down is I want a y-intercept at y equals 0. That's what I want. Okay, then I'm interested in my zeros. So where my zeros occur?
-1, -1, or +1.5. -1, 0.
-1,
0,
0, and 1.5.
Is that it?
That's it. So my y-intercepts are at y equals 0. My zeros are at x equals -1, 0, and 1.5. Make sure on the y-intercepts you give me at y equals whatever, and on the zeros at x equals whatever. Okay? Any questions on that one? All right, next one. I have this function. So I'm looking for the y-intercept. So what's my y-intercept?
3.
3. And what about my zeros?
There
There
are none.
are no zeros on this one. So I would say my y-intercept at y equals 3. And then I would say there are no zeros. So that's what I'm looking at on this problem.
Do we have to write all of that?
I want it written down. That's correct. Okay, next one. So, where are my y-intercepts on this one?
-2.
-2 is close enough. So at y equals -2. And what about my zeros?
-0.5.
-0.5.
And
Positive 0.75.
That's good enough for me. So -0.5 and 0.75. Close enough for me. Question on that one? Okay, on this one, I have this function, so we want to find y-intercepts and zeros. All right, Tanner, what's your y-intercept?
6.
Looks like 6, so we'll say y equals 6. Pace, what about my zeros? I think he can handle it. What'd you say?
I don't want to say what he said.
Say it backwards what he said.
-2, -3.
There we go. So my zeros are at -3 and -2. Why are they called zeros?
because although
There's no altitude.
this one,
X equals 0.
I saw it in my head.
Because when x equals -3, y equals 0.
There we go. That's why it's called that. So what should happen? What should happen when I take -3 or -2 and plug it in here? I should get 0. So let's plug -3 in. -3, that's going to give me 9 plus -15 plus 6. 9 and a 6 go together and give me 15 minus 15 gives me 0. That's why they're called zeros. All right, now we're ready for our calculator. All right, so this is 49 on page 21. We're going to look at 49, 51, and 53. So in 49, I have f of x equals x squared plus 9 over x plus 3. Now, when you're using your calculator, all they want you to find is the zeros. They're not interested in finding the y-intercept. So, here's what I want you to do. I want you to press the home button. Okay, and I want to show you something I never want you to use. Over here on the left side, it says scratch pad. I do not want you to ever use anything to do with the scratch pad. For some reason, the scratch pad screws some things up, depending on what you're working with. So we always want to work on the right side. Okay, so we're going to press home. We want a new document. So I press 1 to get a new document. If this dialog comes up, we're going to say, no, we don't want to save it. And then we're at this point. So what are we wanting to do? We're wanting to graph it, so we're going to press 2. Okay, and we want to graph, it was x squared plus 9 over x plus 3. Does anybody know the key combination that's good to use whenever you're typing in a fraction? Nope.
There's that little thing right there. Is that like a fraction?
Yes. So, what Lauren is talking about is if you press Control and you press divide, it brings up a fraction for you. And then all you have to do is fill it out. It's open. So in the top, what was in the top? X squared plus 9. So I put x squared plus 9 in the top, and then I arrow down to get to the bottom, and that is x plus 3 in the bottom. Once I've done that, I press enter and it graphs it for me. Any issues getting a graph?
Yes.
So what am I looking for again? Zeros. Are there any zeros on this?
No.
No. So my answer to this problem would be there are no zeros. Okay. Well, let's go back. Let's go back to the equation. Let's talk about why there are no zeros. Can anybody explain to me just by looking at this function why there are no zeros?
Square
What does that mean?
over fraction. Wait,
What do you got?
you have a 0.
Can you explain that a little bit? All right. So if I've got a fraction and I want that fraction to be equal to 0, what part of the fraction has to be 0? The numerator has to be 0 in order for a fraction to be 0. And what's the problem with making the numerator 0 here? I can't, because x squared is always going to give me a positive, and a positive plus 9 will never give me 0. So that's why I know there is no 0 on this one. Okay? But keep in mind, if I'm dealing with a fraction, the only way a fraction can be 0 is if what's 0? The numerator. Next one. Alright, so this is 51. We have 2 square root x plus 12 minus 8. So here's what I want you to do to get another graph page. I want you to press Control and Dock. And it brings me back to this dialog. So I can choose a graph again. So I press 2. Control, Dock, DOC.
Get them all at the same time.
No. Alright, so the square roots. To get the square roots, I press Control and the x squared button. That's where the square root is at. Was it x plus 12 on the inside?
Yes.
Alright, so I do x plus 12. I need to arrow to the right to get out of the square root, and then I can do the minus 8. Okay, make sure your minus 8 is not inside the square root, and then press enter. We get the graph. Okay, what are we looking for again?
0.
Zeros. What does it look like the zero is?
Positive 4.
Looks like it's 4, but there's a way with the calculator to find out if it's exactly 4. So make sure you're paying attention here. To find zeros, we're going to press menu. We want to analyze graph, which is 6, so I press 6. And then we want to find a 0, which is 1. So it was menu, analyze graph, 0. And it gets me to here. Now, what you're doing at this point is, it says it wants a lower bound. What it means by lower bound is it wants you to take this line or this hand and put it on the left side of where your 0 is at. So my 0, we're saying, is at 4. So I want to make sure that hand is on the left side of 4. Once it is, I want to press enter. Then it changes to upper bound. Upper bound wants me to get on the right side of where my 0 is. So I get on the right side of where my 0 is and press enter as well. And as you can see, it told you what that 0 is, and it verified what we thought it was. We thought it was 4, so the 0 is 4.
So it can tell you if it's like 3.6 or something.
Correct. So, how do we get to where we have that? We can find the 0. What were the keystrokes?
Menu. 6-1.
Analyze graph, 0. Okay, we press enter on the left, we press enter on the right, then it tells me what my 0 is. So in this particular case, I would say I have a 0 at x equals 4. Question on that one? Okay, let's do one more. Alright, so 53 is g of x equals 6 over x plus 3. G of x equals 6 over x plus 3. So what do I want to do on this screen? Control and dock, and I want a new graph. Okay, and since I'm putting 6 over x in first, what do I want to do to put the 6 over x in? Control, divide, put the 6 on the top, arrow down, put the x on the bottom, arrow to the right, and what was the rest of it? Plus 3. So then we can do plus 3 and press enter. Alright, so now we should be able to find our 0. What does it look like our 0 is?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. Alright, Alex, what do I do to make sure it's negative 2? Okay, G, what do I do to get to a 0? Menu, analyze graph,
0.
and 0. Very good. Then we want to get on the left, press enter. We want to get on the right, press enter, and it shows me that my 0 is as we thought, which is x equals negative 2. Now, you can click with this touchpad up here instead of pressing enter, but I do not recommend it, because if you don't click this just right, it'll do something you don't want it to do. So anytime you want to click, I recommend you press enter instead of pressing the click button. Okay, so always press enter instead of the click button. It'll keep you from screwing up. Okay? Questions on that? So since my 0 is negative 2, what's going to happen if I plug negative 2 back into my function? It should give me a 0. So we plug negative 2 in. 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3 plus 3 gives me the 0. Okay? So what 2 things did we look at finding today? Y-intercept and zeros. And how were we finding them? From the graph and using the graph on the calculator. Okay? So that's what you're working on today. Again, the assignment is pretty quick for you. Whenever you get finished with it, bring it to me. I'll check you off.